2016 public hearing of the Finance and Warrant Commission. Westcat is here, and we will grant permission to Westcat to videotape the meeting. Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else who would like to take the meeting? I see no affirmative responses. With that, I'd like to ask everyone to stand as we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So we are going to switch up our agenda a little bit to accommodate folks who have other commitments this evening, and we will start first with Mr. Connors, our Sewer Commissioner. Welcome.
Right, let's see.
Good to see you too.
So my name is Jim Connors. Most of you know me. Some of you may not want to know me. Sounds like you're trying to forget me. I live at 44 Whitney Avenue. I was privileged enough to serve as FinCom for 10 or 11 years, and I chaired it for 4 years. Just when I thought I was out, Pat Hearn and Nancy Hyde asked me if I could do them a favor. I run. As do others. What I run for to serve on the Sewer Commission. Clearly, I believe in public service, so that's why I did. This time of year, when I sat in your seat, I was tired, I was fed up, I was trying to get out of here. So as a resident of Westwood, I can't thank all of you enough, because I think you play an incredibly integral role in this town. And the work you guys do is fabulous, so thank you very much. I'm not going to ask for anything else that's on the article after that. Basically, what we're doing at the Sewer Commission, maintenance, preventive maintenance, conservation. That's really it. My goal is if you go to a ball game and you leave the game, you're talking about the two teams, you never say a word about the referee, means he or she's done a great job. I'm hoping you never say a word about us. What we're looking to do is, and you've probably seen this most of the last 6 or 7 years, it's called an I&I project, inflow and infiltration. Sewer Department was formed as an enterprise. So we are a self-sustaining enterprise. When we have more money or less money, it does not affect any of the other departments. The sewers were built primarily in the 50s, the 60s. It is an old system, asbestos pipes. What we're trying to do is we brought in an engineering team a number of years ago, and we have basically taken pictures of all our pipes. And we try to figure out from a risk standpoint which pipes are the most, or two things, are in danger of failing or are letting in the most water, groundwater, it rains. When the rain runs into our pipes, it goes into the MWRA system. We're paying the MWRA for rainwater, which we should be doing. We're trying to, if you think of a pipe, line them from the inside. We're trying to keep the structural integrity of the pipes, and we're trying to keep water that shouldn't be in the system from going into the system. The MWRA has a very aggressive grant program, which thanks to Todd and Jeff, we've taken advantage of. So they will grant us $432,000. They will then give us a no-interest loan of $234,000. We will pay for that loan through the savings of water that doesn't run into the pipes that we're not paying MWRA for. Simple as that. Other stuff is just, you've got a truck, it's not good anymore, you've got to replace it, little things like that. Any questions?
Looks like we have no questions. Hold us over.
That's why our article presented to us are quick.
Any questions or comments from residents for our sewer commissioner?
Could I say one more thing?
Please.
I'm sitting next to Pat Hearn, who has retired as a selectman. As somebody who works closely with him, I can't say how lucky we've been to have him. I'm lucky to sit next to you tonight. I was lucky to work with you all those years. Best of health going forward, my friend.
Thank you very much. That's how I read that.
No questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just thank Jeff and Todd, Richie and Sean. I mean, we've got a great group. 15 years ago when I sat here, I was a little skeptical. Getting to know these guys, and thank God Todd and Jeff are in. I can't tell you how lucky we are. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Todd and Jeff, for being here. So I think we're ready to move to the police station.
I'm gonna get the clicker and sit there so we can look at it. I hate to touch
Sure.
people's bags.
Christine, this one? Yep.
So, hello. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things you already know. I hope that doesn't break your hearts. I think we can all collectively say it in our sleep right now. What I want to do, though, is give you an update of things that have happened since we were last together and we last made a presentation for the Finance Commission. So that's my goal today. So first I'm going to start with important updates. We had the November town meeting and want to give you an update on what's happened, on what was approved then. We finished the design since that time, and we've gone through a series of steps that bring us to tonight. So I'm going to walk through a few of these things. At the November town meeting, you'll recall the warrant article action regarding the Scout House, which we successfully closed on the purchase of that in February. And the entire project that you see taking place now behind Town Hall started mid-March. The Scout House will come down probably tomorrow, if not Wednesday. It's just having the utility sign-offs, Jim, is that what you said? But if you were to go back there, you would see a tremendous amount of activity. And we just got a report from Jeff and Todd about the contractors moving along briskly. Some work that is best done when Deerfield is not in session during April break is scheduled for that. They worked right through today in spite of the weather. They are just going forward, and we're very pleased with the progress that's being made so far. And you'll start seeing the American Legion area come together in that defined parking lot and the Deerfield Avenue extension. All is on track time-wise to be done. Should the police headquarters be approved at town meeting, it would tee that up for an August 1st start. So we did complete the design. We do still have a 20,000 square foot building, and you've heard from me before, and you've seen other discussions about the layout of the building space. We have emphasized again and again, there are a lot of reasons behind this building and this size. We need to accommodate our gender diverse workforce. We have many compliance issues, including ADA compliance. We will finally have an adequate and very nice emergency operations center that will double as public space. We've increased our police force since the last building was built by just over 100%. And we have many needs regarding evidence storage. So just to summarize some key points as to why we're doing this with the project, that would be a few of them. And we designed a building which we wanted to have complement Town Hall, which it will be positioned right next door to. As promised, we've been busy and we've held some important community meetings. We've had two. March 10th was over at the Downey School, and last week we were at the Thurston Middle School. We had very nice turnout, especially at the 24th meeting. Both community meetings were reported by WestCat. I know I've seen the March 10th one air already. I'm sure the March 24th one will be coming up. So we know that when we schedule these things, it's not going to fit with everybody's schedule, but we think it's very important that, one, they were held, and two, they're available to be seen. The turnout was really interesting. I talked to somebody after Thursday's meeting who moved into town in August, and I know there were people there who have lived in town for decades. That in of itself is very good. It just was very different cross sections of the community, and people who were very interested, some very inquisitive. We were able to respond to all of their questions, and collectively, I believe we all took away from it. They were very positive meetings. I can't say what people were thinking that they didn't express, but to the extent people spoke to us afterwards or commented during the meeting, the response was all very favorable. So I think if we were to say anything as a highlight for tonight, it's the fact that we can report to you that we have received our bids. We had 4 pre-qualified general contractors respond. The lowest bidder was the one that we were most happy to see be the lowest bidder. They happen to be doing the project, the public safety project in Medfield right now. They have very strong qualifications. Todd just told us they've also been doing the new cemetery expansion work. He has a very good experience working with them. So we have both firsthand knowledge and very close neighbor knowledge about how they're doing. The best part of all of this is that their low bid came in below the low end of our estimates. Below the low end of our estimates.
I'm sorry?
Below. And that's what happened Thursday night when we told people that. People actually applauded. We had a few occasions where people applauded. You know, I'm sure there were skeptics in the crowd, but it was certainly a nice response to that. That is awesome, and we're building accordingly. We're building in a strong contingency into the project of 10%. We want to make sure we have more than enough. We want to get it done once, and we want to get it done right. So we're really happy, and subject to town meeting approval, we'll award that contract. And it will give the contractor about 3 months to prepare for the August 1st start. So we are rolling in good news on that regard. This just recaps what the project, the range was of almost 13.9 to a high of close to 16, and we're telling you we have a project cost of 13.2. So not only are we below, we have a nice margin that we're below. The contractor very much wanted this contract, and they bid aggressively, and having that bid in hand going into town meeting is the ideal situation. We know the design, we know the contractor, we know the amount, we've got the contingency, we've got the enabling work underway with a strong contractor. Speed up very nicely. This is just an estimate now, an update to Pam's previous slides. What we have now is a little more liberty in terms of looking at the optimal time range to borrow. That will be something that Pam and Jim Gavin and our bond counsel will work on this summer. But we feel that we are in this range of maybe under 700,000, just low 700,000, all in annual cost. That's going to be subject to the work that Pam and Jim Gavin do. It will come through the Board of Selectmen to ultimately approve it, so they'll keep us apprised because we will intend to optimize the situation for the town. You know, the way the borrowing rates, the term, where we are given the pricing that we've been able to achieve. So, again, very good news. That's my recap. We're happy to answer questions. Jeff is here. He played an integral role in last Thursday's meeting. We made him more of an active voice so he could bring reality for people what it is to be the police department in the space. And we have Heather Rose, a new officer in the police department, speak about what it's like in the current space to be a female officer in what is totally inadequate space. And anyway, you can all view that and hear firsthand after she spoke. She actually, people applauded for her comments and just for her service. And we had George Dare there and the chief, so it was really been a team effort. So we're happy to answer any questions. Oh, you know what, I cannot pause. I failed to comment. I wanted to say that we had a meeting the Board of Selectmen did last week. We took the time to revisit the energy efficiency of the building. We thought that, you know, it was a conversation that hadn't quite landed. We had a meeting. We're glad that Pete could join us. Tom Philbin was there. You know, Pete raises very good points. We asked our consultants to go back. I'll let Pete speak for himself, but where we landed as far as the selectmen are concerned is we are sticking to the energy elements, the design that we had previously designed. To unfortunately, to change anything at this point would be to undo the bid, to undo the design, to revisit all that, and we concluded we would stay with Warrant. So,
Questions, comments? Okay, comments. Question, Pete.
I just want to thank Nancy especially for all the work you've done. I think it's been a long process. I think you've gotten, great input, great team working on it. Overall, I think you guys have done a great job. Thank you.
Well, Pete, thank you because you've been an important part of this process. And thanks to George, your work, public safety task force, and all of the folks who served on that task force and have for years now. World, Chief, thank you, and Tim, thank you for being on this road with us for a long time. There's been a lot of work, and thank you all to your leadership on this. Any questions or comments from residents? Yes.
Joe Genta from Fox Hill Street. I was at the March 10th meeting and I asked this question. I didn't quite get an answer, so this might be a better place to get the answer. Is just talk about several large capital projects in the future that need to be addressed. We've gone through, now this will be our third large capital project in the past 5 years that we've tackled, and it looks like a great project. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what the cost would be for these other projects, if we identified those costs or estimated those costs. Have we factored them into our pro formas for our debt service and what it's going to look like over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, and if you could provide us, the taxpayers, with some kind of information on that.
Well, I mean, we had a good discussion about this at our last meeting, and I think I'll quote one of my colleagues who said, capital construction is, infinite. It's always needed.
Right.
It's like, your house, you're always replacing things. So the long-term planning committee has a list which prioritizes the various capital needs of the town, which is always revisited every year because there are always needs. With that, I'm going to defer to the selectmen.
I'm afraid I'm going to probably give them the same response we did at the meeting. We don't have fixed numbers on all these, and in particular, I think you had inquired about the schools, and they have to speak for themselves. We don't have any project in front of us. We don't have a specific timeline. I don't feel like it's our place to talk about how much they think they might be spending. I think it has to come from the school department. And they have not provided us with that information, either through long-range planning or to the Board of Selectmen. It doesn't mean we're ignoring it, though. We have it on the list. It's kind of a placeholder. We don't know if it's 4, 5, 6, 8 years. That comes with time, and they've got to do their due diligence and hopefully have a process similar to the one we just went through to look at what the options are and to come to a place where they say this is the best option. I know they're doing a lot of work, and unfortunately, we don't have numbers tied to that. Now, we have other projects on our list. Some of them have estimated numbers, but they have to go through a review. So as I think of what was on the list, we have the DPW project, we have a potential community center. The size and scope of those will define how much money. Just because they're asked for and at a potential cost does not mean that's what the town should be projecting. What I can assure the public is that we're looking at those things, and we go through a thorough review before we bring something forward and say this is the project and this is the cost, as evidenced by what we've just gone through with the fire station, police headquarters. Do we know they're multi-million-dollar projects? Yeah, we know that. Do we know exactly when they're going to be? No. Because a community center may come 20 years from now. Just because it's on the list in the next 6 years does not mean that's going to happen in that time frame. Costs change over that time. A lot of things change. So we look at it. We have the long-range document, which we can share with the public, and I believe part of that information. not the projections as much, as the history. Do we put dollar amounts in any projections in the warrant? Just the estimates. So we disclose as best we can, but I've got to say the hardest one is the school department one, and that's got to come from them. We do not have that information.
Regarding the new school buildings, does the town have any say in those buildings, or is it all school department? Do they control the design of the building?
It doesn't mean we shouldn't and couldn't provide guidance, and I think one of the areas that can be done through might be the permanent building committee, which is not under our appointment process. It's actually the moderator who appoints the permanent building committee, so somewhat neutral. So that's an area where I think we're planning to explore things like guidelines for future buildings, but we do not have a say over those design.
Mary, can I just really add what Peter is saying? 'Cause I think he's raised a critical point. I think there's a tremendous expertise, I think you've heard me say this, of what has been built up over the last 3 capital projects, the library, the fire station, the police station. And I would encourage those school committee folks who are here to leverage some of that expertise. And I also think it would broaden the ultimate support that probably would be received if it's vetted through the intense, very transparent, very open, sometimes very difficult process. But some of us have been involved for 3+ years on this, and I really, I see a couple of school committee members here, would encourage them, to reach out and broaden the base, because not to leverage this expertise. A lot of us have some hard calluses that we learn, but I think it's very beneficial. It can only benefit the school building analysis, which is some guides, and Peter's right on with that comment.
Yes, sir.
Has the finance committee done anything on their own from a pro forma standpoint of what they envision the capital expenditures look like over the next 5 to 10 years? Can you have anything internally that you've done based on what you're hearing from the scuttlebutt?
What I can tell you is, we actually spent a lot of time looking at the global issue of planning this year. And we had, earlier on this year, we had a presentation from the Long Range Financial Planning Committee of the town. They came to present to us. And it would take too much time now, but we learned a lot about that process, which involves a cross-section of folks from town, along with the selectmen, who do that work and create this plan with various projects which are prioritized. We then formed our own long-range financial planning committee this year on FinCom, because we wanted to really make sure that we were looking at issues not in a vacuum, but in the greater context. And so we did that. It's not up to FinCom to decide what the priorities are going to be in terms of capital projects. We are a reactive body. We vote on what is presented to us, balancing out all of the priorities. So I can't tell you what's going to be on the article, the warrant next year. Everything has to be looked at in context.
I just think it'd be useful for us to, as taxpayers, to know what's coming down the road before we vote on each project one by one on a piecemeal basis. Because if you're prioritizing projects, you're kind of got to look at the whole scope of projects and design every project with the whole scope in mind. And I hope that's being done. That's all I'm saying.
The 5-year capital plan is on the town website, is that correct?
Yeah.
There's a constantly updated document on the town website, it's the 5-year capital plan. It lists out every project that's kind of in the pipeline, timing, and estimated costs. It's out there for everyone to see. It's right on the town website.
I'll mention too, just a few other things on that question. So the long-range subcommittee of the FinCom, aside from spending time with the long-range planning committee for the town and the budget steering committee for the town, is trying to do our best to estimate, I'll say unofficially, where sources of revenue may come from the town in the future. So new growth, which is not a science, but it's an art and an estimate. And Pam has to be conservative about it, because as we said at our last FinCom meeting, to the extent that Pam overestimated new growth that could be applied in the budget in some way, and she was wrong, she overestimated it, that would be a midstream reduction of payroll somewhere, teachers or police or whatever. So we're doing our best to think about how that will come in, and also where those uses are for. So as Craig said, there is a big book out there on the wish list in the municipal side of capital projects. We've looked at all that, and we've heard from the department heads about that. And we're aware of what the school committee is generally thinking about. We don't know the specifics, nor do I think they settled on, but we're aware that they've got some big projects that they're contemplating. So we're trying to get ahead of that when it comes. We're doing exactly what you're suggesting, Joe, which is to say, what should we be thinking about that today that could impact us down the road? So we are paying attention to that for sure. One thing to also add is that the town put in place a capital stabilization fund last year. And this is really for the first time the town had it, and also filled it up a little bit. So we had 1.7 million or so in the capital stabilization fund. That could be used to offset the cost of the capital project. It will be this year. In Pam's budget, you'll see there's already some things that we're using. For example, the field at Flay High is being funded through that partially this year. So, we have the ability to think about where excess cash goes in the future, and the free cash is a spot for that, and also the stabilization fund. But I think we can also say that we're pretty fortunate this year to be in a position where a project of this size, which in almost all instances would be funded through an override, an exempt debt override, is actually being funded within the budget. So our taxes aren't going to increase this year as a result of this police station. It's pretty good accomplishment. And I'll also point out that this, in the budget, has a projected amount of $800,000 a year in debt service for that. And I think what you heard earlier from Nancy is that this may come in as much as $100,000 less than that. So that's a pretty terrific outcome here. We certainly have to keep our eye on future needs for capital, but to be able to do this without going to the taxpayers in addition to 2.5, it's a pretty great result.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the police station? I think we're set. Thank you very much. So with that, we will move on to Pam with the financial article.
I might stand over here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I will walk through the articles in the handout. I just want to really quickly go through an overview, just to kind of recap where we are with the overall budget. And so this is a slide you've seen before, but just to recap, when we talk about town finances, we are looking at a number of areas of overall needs, and we have to provide for that in the budget. And that includes the operating budget, which is the annual budget for the school and municipal departments, how we provide those annual services to the community. And that might be what people are most familiar with. But we also have to provide for the capital assets, maintaining our buildings, making sure we have proper equipment for our police and fire and DPW departments, making sure our school buildings are well maintained. We also have to provide for reserve accounts. Just like a homeowner, we need to have money in the bank to protect the town in case of emergencies. And there are standard levels of what we should have in our reserve accounts based on industry standards and how we would be judged by the rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So we have to make sure we're taking care of that. We also have long-term liabilities, and that includes our pension assessments, our OPEB, our post-retirement health care assessments. Those are some of the fun things to take care of, but we have to provide for that overall budget. And then importantly, we have to make sure that everything we're doing, we have to look at how does that impact the tax bill. We are a typical suburban community in that 80% of our funding comes from our real estate taxes. So we know that everything we do always comes back to the tax bill, and we're always making sure we're working that in. So all of these things we have to take care of in each and every budget. If we go too far in one area, we fail as a town. If we're building up those reserve accounts to levels too high, we're taking away from our operating budgets and wouldn't be able to have adequate budgets for school and municipal services. If we're putting too much money into those operating budgets, we're not going to be able to sustain those every year going forward, and we would not have enough in capital. We would not have enough for proper equipment for our police and fire department. If we don't address those long-term liabilities, the pensions, the OPEB, we're just pushing that problem down the road and having our children deal with that in their budgets. And then again, if we're not looking at that tax bill impact, we're trying to do too much and not being mindful of that tax bill, we'd again fail as a community. So I know I spent some time on that, but we want to emphasize that it's always a balance. It's a balance every year. It's a very difficult balance. The hardest thing we do is trying to make sure that we're addressing all of those areas. And I know certain people have, areas that they prefer over others, but the reality is that we have to deal with all of them. As already has been mentioned, we have a long-range financial planning committee in place. It's been operating in the town since 2003. Mary Ann already identified that that's a very wide cross-section of different people on that committee. Board of Selectmen member, a school committee member, 3 members of the Finance and Warrant Committee, Planning Board, Board of Assessors, Collector, Treasurer, the school superintendent, the finance director, the town administrator, and 2 at-large community members. That committee meets once a month, if not more, during the budget season, and they are really working to make sure we're doing that long-term look at a long-term view, what's coming down the road for different projects, making sure we're balancing out the needs of all of those areas. The town has been successful over the last several years. Our town meeting has really voted some terrific budgets. The town does have a AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's. That certainly helps us when we go out to issue debt, helps us get the lowest interest rate. We've made great progress on our liabilities, our pension and OPEB. We are on track to meet our requirements in both those areas under 30-year funding schedules. Those are long-term liabilities, but we're on track. We've made some great progress on our reserve accounts. We do have appropriate amounts in our reserves. We've had healthy operating budgets for school and municipal for the last couple of years, and we have been able to increase our capital spending. So again, every year it's a balance. This committee really helpful in making sure we're looking at all of those areas and that we're not just doing things in one year that might hurt future years or not preparing for future years. And again, we've had some success the last couple of years in addressing that. Just to talk about university station revenue, we are in a different position than we've been in other years with this new project coming online. And it's a terrific position for a small town like Westwood to have this kind of commercial revenue coming to the town. The Long-Range Financial Planning Committee, before we had a shovel in the ground at University Station, was already talking about how are we going to spend that money. How are we going to make sure that we allocate that to all of those different needs in the budget, that we don't put it all in one place, that we spend it wisely and thoughtfully. So they were already looking at the different areas that needed to be addressed. So this slide shows you the thought process from the long range. When the University Station revenue comes in, we were going to look at these different avenues, and starting on the left, direct service costs. We all knew as a community that there would be some additional costs associated with that project coming online. That was part of the process when the town approved the project. And primarily those direct service costs were in the area of public safety, that we would need additional police and fire, and then school impact, that the residential component of the project could bring some additional costs to the school system. So direct service costs was one area. The other area was operating budgets above 2.5%. So we all know that under Prop 2.5, we're generally limited in what we can do for the operating budget growth each year. 2.5% is typically not enough to maintain healthy budgets each year. So we knew that some of the revenue could help us do better in that area. The third avenue, debt service or capital. We knew we wanted to spend additional money on capital, and we could do that either through direct capital spending or taking on additional debt service to fund some of the larger projects. And then finally, we wanted to make sure, the last item there, tax relief. Again, one of the major things we're trying to balance is the impact on the tax bill. So we wanted to make sure that that was a component of maybe using some of this new money from University Station to help out our residents and try to limit at least the growth in that tax bill every year. So again, before the money came, we were laying out these categories. I do want to point out what you don't see there are 2 categories that I mentioned on the first slide, the reserve account and then the long-term liabilities. We do not have to use at this point any of our new money for those 2 accounts because we were able to address those within our current budget. As I mentioned, we've built up our reserves to appropriate levels, and our pension and OPEB liabilities, we're on track with those, mainly through savings that occurred in our health insurance budget in the ongoing budget each year, so we don't need to address those. Now, just looking at those categories as the University Station money comes in. FY15 was the first year we had new University Station money. We had about $565,000. In that first year, all the money went to the category of direct service costs. In FY15, that money was fully allocated to our public safety budgets, police and fire, and we were able to hire some additional staffing in both of those departments to assist with handling the service impact from the University Station project. In the current year, FY16, we had a significant influx of new funding, $3.2 million in new growth from the University Station project. Now, how did we use that? First of all, we did not use all of it. If you look on the different spikes, on the left, direct service, we had none in FY16. The second one, operating budgets. We did apply $1.5 million to the school and municipal operating budgets to provide an increase above the 2.5%. And particularly, both those budgets went up about 5% in FY16. That cost us $1.5 million, about $1 million of which was for the school budget, and $461,000 for the municipal budget. When money goes into the operating budget, that's a permanent use of that money. We don't every year go back to the operating budgets and kind of take back funds. And it's really the nature of our budgets. Our budget, school and municipal, are based on staffing. When funds are allocated and they add staff, they add new teachers. We don't want to go back the next year and kind of pull those back and have a fluctuation up and down on staffing. So $1.5 million went into the operating budgets, and that's a permanent use of that money. We also took some money into the debt service capital category. Fall town meeting voted $925,000 into the capital stabilization fund, which Mike mentioned earlier. So that was a one-time allocation into that account, and really significantly helped us build up that account. You'll see us use a little bit of that tonight. So of the $3.2 million, 1.5 was used for the operating budget permanently to those budgets. That leaves us about 1.6 of that money to consider again in the next year's budget. So here we are now in the FY17 budget. In total, we have $2.9 million of University Station money to consider in this budget. $1.3 million is new revenue that we anticipate coming FY17, new growth from the project. And that would be new value that they've added down there from last July 1st through this June 30th, 2016. And for the Finance Commission, you'll note that we did increase that number. We were carrying an estimate originally of about $1 million. We've now increased that to $1.3 million. So $1.3 million in new money, coupled with that 1.6 I mentioned that we didn't allocate on a permanent basis in FY16. So those two numbers give us $2.9 million to work with. So how are we using that? This is the first year that we're able to allocate to every category. So first, on the left, the direct service costs. We are allocating $215,000 to direct service costs, and this year that is going to the school department. They do at this point have some children in some of the residential housing down there, and so the $215,000 is allocated to the school budget to accommodate those kids coming to the school system and the bus that they need to, at this point, utilize for that area. The second category, $1.1 million to the operating budgets. Again, this is to allow those budgets to grow above the 2.5% we normally could afford. The split between that, $883,000 to the school budget, about $272,000 to the municipal budget. The third category, the debt service capital. As was previously mentioned, we are allocating about $800,000 of the total revenue this year towards the capital, and that would be what we'd be able to use to service the police station. So that project that we just went through, this is the funding that we'd be able to fund that debt service each year for that project and not have to go outside for a debt exemption. And then finally on the right, the first year that we're doing this, $800,000 of this money to tax relief. So again, as I mentioned, we're trying to say some of this new money coming from the University Station, we want to get out to our residents in some form of tax relief. And I'm going to show you a slide that shows how we apply that $800,000. So again, trying to distribute that to many areas. This is the first year that we're able to get to all of our areas. And this would be our process every year. Every year as we look at the budget and we look at what's coming in from University Station, we would be allocating that among the various areas, trying to get that best balance that we can. Just looking very quickly at debt service, we do have financial policies on how much debt we should carry as a town. Similar to a homeowner, there are limits on how much of our ongoing annual revenue we should spend on debt. For Westwood, that's shown by the green bar on the left, we should spend about 8% of our net revenue on debt service. And for us, that would be about $5.7 million a year for debt service within Prop 2.5. What we're actually spending is in the blue bar on the right, about $2.3 million in debt service, and that's about 3% of our revenue. So we're well below the debt levels that our financial policies call for, our industry standards, and again, what S&P and Moody's would look at when they rate us. So even bringing on $700,000 or $800,000 a year in debt for the police station would still keep us well below. So that would bring us up to about $3 million, would still be at about half of the debt service that we could carry as a town. So we still have significant room to bring on additional projects as there are more capital projects considered over the next couple of years. And then finally, just to look at tax relief. The bar here, the green bar on the left, shows the current average tax bill in town. The average home in town is valued at about $560,000. Their tax bill is just over $8,600. Without taking any kind of action, that bill would grow by about 3%, as shown by the blue bar in the middle, to just over $8,800. The selectmen are taking a couple of pieces of action to try to limit that. First, the police station, keeping that debt within Proposition 2.5. If the police station went out as an override, the blue bar in the middle would actually grow higher. It would grow by about another $104 to just over $8,900. So keeping that police station within 2.5 keeps the blue bar where it is. The selectmen are doing a couple of other items to actually bring that bar down. Allocating the $800,000 from university station revenue drives that down by about $104. In addition, we have an article on the warrant for this year to appropriate $500,000 of free cash directly to tax relief. So that's an article that residents can vote on, particularly that article at town meeting. And free cash is really a municipality's retained earnings, in a sense, what's left over from previous year's budget. Applying that $500,000 drives that blue bar down again by about $65. So the resulting bar would be the green bar on the right. This home's bill for FY17 would be $8,690, about a 1% increase over the current year. And I do just want to point out the one other bullet there, that all of those bars, the commercial revenue in town is subsidizing the residential tax bill. We have what's called a split tax rate, where the commercial rate is much higher than the residents. Our commercial rate in the current year is $28.27 per thousand. The residents, almost half that, $14.66. So the commercial pay much more in a sense than their fair share. Commercial in FY16 makes up about 14% of the property value in town, but they'll pay about 25% of the tax bill. That in itself provides that average home with over an $1,100 savings on their tax bill. So if we had a single rate and did not charge commercial higher, all of those bars would go up by about $1,100. So a really important component, and the selectmen will work to maintain that again in FY17. So a couple of different ways that we're trying to go at tax relief. Yes, that final bar still goes up. Tax relief doesn't mean that your taxes are going down or that we can eliminate your tax bill, but we're certainly working hard to kind of limit that growth. The 1% increase would be the lowest increase in growth that we've had in a number of years. And finally, just to summarize, as we went through the beginning, trying to cover many different needs and balance those. This is a summary of what we end up with and what we'll go through for the individual articles. But the operating budget on the top, this budget will provide for a school operating budget of $41.8 million, a 4.9% increase over the current year. In addition to that number, $214,000 in direct university station related costs that I went through on a previous slide. The municipal budget, $18.8 million, a 3.7% increase over the current year. The second set of bullets, commitment to a high level of capital. We are able to increase what we can do for capital for both school and municipal. The school capital article, $885,000, municipal, $850,000. And in addition, again, what's already been mentioned, we have a significant project, $650,000 to replace the high school turf field and resurface the track. And we will fund that with the capital stabilization fund that was set up earlier last fall at the fall town meeting. A significant project that would be hard to fund within the school or municipal article. We're able to do that community-wide project using some of the funds that we set up in that capital stabilization fund. The next set of bullets will continue to address the reserves and liabilities. $100,000 appropriation to our stabilization fund, which is our main reserve or savings account, and that would be a transfer from free cash. And then the $1.35 million annual appropriation to OPEB. Again, we were able to build that within our budget by 2 significant times that we had savings within our healthcare budget. We applied that to OPEB, and now we're able to fund that $1.35 million every year. And then finally, provide for the tax relief, as I already mentioned, 3 separate things. $800,000 from the University Station. That provides $104. $500,000 free cash voted to tax relief, $65 savings. And then the third one, providing money to fund the police station within 2.5, another $104. So in total, $273 that we're able to save from what that tax bill would have been for the average one. So with that overview, I think then you just wanted to walk through the financial articles from your handout.
Yeah, let me just ask if folks have questions, and actually, maybe just address one thing, folks may not have heard about that, we have some questions about capital items. Can you just speak to, or someone speak to the need for the work on the school track, that expenditure? Somebody just so folks know what that's
Yeah, I
about.
can speak on behalf of that. The track right now has several wear spots along the entire surface of the track. Structural integrity of the track is actually 100%, but the surface itself isn't. So we felt that it was timely that we're replacing the turf surface to the field itself. So why not complement that with the track as well and just hit 2 projects within the same contractor?
And as I understand it, we've heard before that the turf is actually a safety issue for the students.
Yes, the turf fibers right now have worn so much that the rubber infill right now can't have a consistent disbursement across the field playing surface itself, which is obviously what you want with the synthetic turf. So to say that it's as good as it could be or would be a drastic understatement, I would say.
It's hard to believe that that field is 10 years old. And they told us when we put it in, it was going to be good for 10 years.
And how about the multi-purpose? Is that close to being needed to be
Our purpose is about 2 years out. What we do is we run an annual, I think I had mentioned this before, but for those that weren't in attendance, we run an annual GMAX testing, and that rates the field. It takes the hottest spots, the most active spots within the playing surface itself, and takes test readings. It can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. When the readings obviously are higher than what they should be, it becomes your worst enemy. But then it's a good indicator of what your options are. At this point, our options are 100% replacement within play hive, and the cracking field out back is about 2 years out.
I don't think that field gets quite as much traffic as Play High does. Living in that neighborhood, there are people on Play High, it seems, all weekend long. And even when they're not formal groups there, there are kids and families that seem to be out there doing stuff. It's a good resource for us.
We've had the opportunity to, firsthand, if you want to see a field that's 100% playable. I know Craig's probably been out there several times, and those of you that have children in the flag football program in town, go down to the Severian playing field and then go to Play Hive, and then you can answer the question for yourself. The investment that we're making, it's a tremendous opportunity that we can drive a mile away and see it firsthand. Walk out to the 50-yard line of both fields and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Has technology improved over the past 10 years?
Very, very much so.
So
What's the life expectancy?
You're still looking at 10, 11 years, but the technology itself has improved in that the fiber is more durable, so the fibers won't wear as fast, but once they do start to break down and once they decompose, it's still, but you still have your high traffic areas, again, your 50-yard line, your goal line, your cross goals, but the technology itself within the playing surface, it's more cushioned now, less resistance on your knees, your joints. I wish they had it when I played, really do.
I'm just glad they have face masks.
Just curious, what happens to the old material? Is that recycled?
Yeah, there's the company that takes it, the turf world is really down in Atlanta, Georgia, and what they do is they recycle all the turf down in Atlanta. Some companies, landscape companies, purchase it to install in your backyard for batting cages, for putting greens. But typically it gets shipped down to Atlanta and stored in a warehouse down there. And then from there, I believe they auction it off at a very small cost.
Any questions from FinCom thus far, or from residents? Okay. Looks like we can continue on, with other financial articles.
Maybe I'll just, I'm just gonna go through your handout.
Please, thank you.
So the first two articles are supplemental appropriations for FY16. So these are articles that just kind of clear up anything with the current year budget. The first one is the snow and ice, $225,000, and we're showing that as a transfer from the reserve account. So that reserve account has $400,000 in it currently, the FinCom reserve account. This would use $225,000 for snow and ice. And the second article is similar, and that's dealing with items in the current year, but here we're appropriating some additional funds. So one piece is the ambulance service. This is kind of how we usually typically do purchasing anything for the ambulance. We wait until we know what we need and do it as our Article 2 transfer and use the ambulance revenue for that. The conservation expenses, $20,000. The Conservation Commission would like to start doing some trail maintenance in town. This is the initial start to that, and it will be funded by conservation receipts. And then you see a couple of items listed here that are school budget related, and we're funding those with free cash. Sometimes in the schools, when they do their budget, they have items that are really more one-time items, unusual items, or capital related. And we work with the schools to not have those within the school budget, the annual operating budget, but move them to other accounts. So the McKinney-Bento is a good example of that. Last year, you remember that was originally in the school budget. Those were the costs associated with transporting the homeless that were being housed in the motel. We didn't think that would be an ongoing cost, so we thought it best to pull it out, fund it this way. I think we funded about $150,000 last year. This $41,000 kind of closes that out. That program is now ending, and there will be no additional costs for that. I think just a good example, though, where sometimes things are better handled on a one-time basis and not build them into the budget. And that's what we try to do and work with the schools to do those kind of adjustments to their budget requests. So those are the Articles 1 and 2. Okay. And then the next couple, 3, there's no unpaid bills. We usually just leave that go in case we need anything. And then the next one is the FY17 salary and expense budgets. So that's where the detail would be on the, what we call Appendix D. That was a separate handout. And shows all of the budgets that we would vote for the operating budgets at town meeting for all of the municipal and school department. No change to the municipal budget from what you had previously seen. And then the school budget, the only change there is a couple of items I just mentioned, things that were pulled out to Article 2, and the additional little grouping of the university station related costs underneath the school budget. The only other item that changed there from what you've been reviewing since February, we did receive an updated assessment for the Blue Hills Regional School, and that number was about $33,000 less than the original estimate, so this now reflects that.
And Pam, just to be clear for folks, since we were here last, the school committee has voted to approve the numbers that appear here.
And the numbers appear here is what the school committee voted last week. Yes.
Any questions?
So then the next couple of articles are capital budget articles. The municipal capital, 850,000, and the items are listed there. Again, those have been reviewed by the Long Range Financial Planning Committee and recommended to the selectmen. Pretty standard list for what we have on the municipal side. Equipment for DPW, fire, police.
Questions?
Okay, and the next article, the school capital budget. This list of the particular items come from the school committee, and they voted that last week, 885,000. And again, deals with a lot of different equipment that they need and, repairs and annual maintenance to buildings. And both of those are higher than we've been able to do the last couple of years for the capital budget. And then the next one is kind of other capital, from other, besides strictly municipal and schools, 750,000. Two items here, the turf field, which we just mentioned, 650,000. Again, we're showing the funding source for that, the capital stabilization fund. So we currently have 1.7 million in the capital stabilization fund that town meeting voted last fall. So we would be using 650,000 of that, leaving us 1.1 million in that account at this time. And the second item there is to move forward on two pieces of equipment for the fire department, 2 fire engines. It's typical for us to lease purchase our fire equipment. We would enter into a 5-year lease to buy 2 new engines. This would be, it's a long lead time to get that up and going. This $100,000 would be just to start the process and get that underway. Then we would enter the lease purchase, and the lease payment would then each year be in the municipal article. It would come in at the same time in that municipal article. You see we're in a current lease on a piece of equipment. When that lease ends, we would then assume this new lease, and that would take a slot for fire in the municipal capital article.
Question, is there a different standard, a different percentage vote we need on taking money out for capital stabilization?
The capital stabilization does require a 2/3 vote by town meeting.
Well, the ambulance did not, so.
The ambulance is not.
So would you actually have that as 2 separate articles?
Well, the whole article would require a 2/3 vote.
That would be, and if not getting your 2/3 vote, if you didn't get 2/3, you could still have your ambulance. I'm just wondering if you want to separate those 2 votes. I don't know. Ginger.
So,
Okay.
okay. The next item is the $100,000 for the stabilization fund. As I mentioned, that's the town's main reserve account. We've been doing the $100,000 each year as kind of a minimum transfer from free cash to the stabilization fund. We currently have $2.7 million in the stabilization fund. This would bring it to about 2.8, right in line with our financial policy. And then finally, the next one, 1.35 billion to the OPEB liability. This requires a 2/3 vote to put this into the trust account. This is being funded within our ongoing budget. Again, really from the savings a couple of years ago in the health insurance budget, we've been able to bring this in line into our ongoing budget. The 1.35 is in line with what we need to do to stay on track on a funding schedule to address the OPEB liability.
Pam, any further questions from FinCom for Pam on our financial articles? Mike?
2 quick ones. Pam, can you just want to check my math on free cash? So you told us in the past we have about 4.9 million as of the end of last fiscal year, June 30th, 2015. And the budget says we're going to spend 2.6 million or so. And our policy is we want to have 4% of our operating budgets in free cash. It's not going to be about 2.4 million. So just doing the math, it looks like we're right at where our policy wants to be.
Yeah, those last couple of articles will be spending just a bit more than like our strict policy would require. So right now, out of the 4.9, we'd be spending about 3 million, leaving us 1.8 as what's called unallocated. So a bit lower, but if you remember, we're using 500,000 as that tax relief article, so a bit different than we've done in other years. So free cash is certified every year. So this is our number certified last fall for last June 30th. We would then again this fall have a new number certified that would replenish that.
Again, that can grow. We've conservatively estimated excise tax, as we say. And if that comes in higher than that, that can in fact bulk up free cash.
So that is what is the main driver for free cash. Revenue above budget, non-tax revenue above budget. And it's primarily been coming in the motor vehicle excise receipts, which have been very strong, and also in the building permit activity has been very strong in town. So those numbers, what would go to next year's free cash is how that activity is this year in FY16. So when we close out the year in June 30th, if that revenue is above the budget, which we know it will be and we expect it to be, we'll have another healthy balance of free cash.
Yeah, so we should have an excess of 2 million there, and we also have 2.8 in stabilization.
Correct.
And one other ministerial question. You talked about in Article 1 that the reserve account, the FinCom reserve account, or whatever it's officially called, is funded with 400,000. We're going to use 225. Does that bucket get refilled for snow and ice next year? How does that work?
Yes, that's an annual, in a sense, like an operating budget.
Okay.
You know, so the town's voting school budgets, municipal budgets, and then they vote 400,000 for if anything came up during a year, if there was an emergency. It's state law that allows that account to be in place.
So will that account end up at 575 after it gets funded, or?
No, so that is like a regular budget where it's 400,000. If we use it for something, whatever happens on June 30th, the balance closes out to free cash.
Got it.
And then in the next year's budget, we appropriate another 400,000.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Question, there's a $20,000 item here, library branch boiler replacement. I'm just curious, is that going to be covered under the Green Communities grant that Tom's going for, or is that in his proposal?
Tom will be consulted as to what would be appropriate, but it's not, I don't think it's within this proposal.
I don't think it is. I don't think so.
Okay. Could it be included?
Well, he's currently putting together, did he submit that, or
Yeah,
is he still?
Tisha's wrapping it up. She was as of last week. I can check, I can double check tomorrow to see if that was part of. I'm not sure if it was or not, because I know what he had submitted this year isn't as much as what he had submitted last year for a total number. I think last year was like 240-ish, and this year is like 212 or something. And it's an odd increment, so I'll check tomorrow though.
Well, we really gotta replace the boiler, and so not putting it within the budget would put that at risk if we're just relying on the state. We're not sure we'll get to fund.
Any other questions from FinCom? Pam? Questions or comments from residents? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know you've been through a lot of that budget material time after time after time this year. Appreciate your time and attention on that. We had a lot of different items because we have some different money. The town's had some terrific things that we've been able to look at, so I appreciate you spending the time going through all that.
Thanks for your great work, Pam. Thank you. I think we'll next, if it's all right, turn to the Historical Commission, and then we've got a few after that. Mr. Walsh, that's all right. I know Peter Parabolos is here. We were further down on the agenda, Mr. Walsh. Peter, do you want to come forward?
Yeah.
I know that you've, the Historical Commission has made a few changes to this article since you were here last.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you wouldn't mind just briefly summarizing for us, we have the text, but what the changes are that have been made?
That's exactly what we did.
Great, thank you.
So since last we spoke, I did have some suggestions from FinCom. So working with Marjorie on the FinCom, on some of the language, kind of to help us with. We have some changes. So basically, we did add a hardship clause, which is what was lacking before. That's been added. Hopefully you have a red line copy which shows you that the language for that, which was added. We also, there was another clause that was added. There was a question that came up with respect to removable or salvageable artifacts, and if the homeowners didn't want those artifacts removed. So we sort of, we stuck a clause in that basically said that if the homeowners just wanted to wait out the 6 months and then demolish the house, they were going to do that. They wouldn't necessarily have to work with the historical commission to try and preserve any interior features of the house. We added a verifying clause on what would need to happen if a demolition were to occur before the 6 month waiting period. So if they wanted to do it before 6 months, then they would have to do the following things. Clear up that clause that's in there already. We also added a clause that the demolition permit is transferable to a new owner. So if you get a demolition permit and you sell the house, you can actually transfer the demolition permit to the new owner. I believe it's a 2-year transfer period that's good for it. We also added a predetermination clause at the end. That's pretty much what we've done. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you,
Did you
Peter.
get a red line copy of the document? Okay, great.
Questions, Peter? Questions or comments from residents on this article? Thank you very much for all your work on
Sure.
it.
Yeah, can I just say how much improved this document is from last year and just how working with the committee?
Yeah, I just want to thank Marjorie again for taking up her lunchtime and going over this multiple days to do this. So thanks very much for your help. I hope you can support it. If not, that's fine too. But I appreciate you helping us out.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, brings us to Mr. Walsh.
Yes. All right, so picking up where we left off with Board of Selectmen articles, we have the street acceptance. There's only one Blue Hill Drive from Leah down to the Whitewood Road area. It's now, if you will, it's a circle down the bottom, so we'll be accepting that from the state. The road improvement.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
Is that certified as complete?
Yes.
that Section?
That section is, yes. Anyone else? All right, road improvements, the next one is just to allow the town to apply for and accept Chapter 90 funds, pretty much a standard article. Next article is to increase the hotel tax from 4%, which it is currently now, up to the state maximum of 6%. I think it's pretty much self-explanatory.
Do you know how much we collect a year of that?
It's not a lot, because we only have one hotel in town so far, but there's another one coming. So, another one coming? Absolutely.
Permit application is under review.
So moving along, then we have the article that Pam talked about appropriating $500,000 of free cash to tax relief. Next article has to do with the appropriation of funds to the Elderly Trust Fund for relief. You may recall the language has changed if you were to compare them, and that's because we were able to run it by House Counsel for the legislature up on the Hill. We were able to run it by council, and based on those changes, the actual language of the amendment of the petition changed. So we feel comfortable that if it passes at town meeting, at least we'll have the right language to get to the funding there. Next article had to do with complete streets design for Gay Street and 109. We're asking for $90,000 to be appropriated so that we can design those. And Todd and his team can apply for the complete streets funding to work on 109 and Gay Street, depending on how much money is available. Next is the collection bylaw bin, also known as an unattended donation container.
Just a quick note, I was coming down 109 tonight, and I noticed there's a purple ugly one in the Gulf gas station. I said, I'm glad we're putting that finally on the warrant, because it's rusted, it looks terrible, and I'm thinking, okay, we could do much better with this bylaw to help straighten that out. We did add the language so that it could go on town property, as brought up by one of the residents last time with the permission of the town administrator. We also have, you have the long petition on that one. We have the home rule petition for the sale of wine off premises at the farmer's market. As you may recall, we did this last year, but we had to clear up a couple of little things within the article. This will clear those up. Most of the last one, I think, yes. There's the amendment to the general bylaws, retail stores. We've been through this before. It had to do with certain hours not being able to collect trash during certain hours, etc. Pretty much spelled out right there between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. So it's just pretty much to bring the town in line to protect the residents from noise at certain hours. That's it.
Any questions for Chairman Walsh? Any of this further selectmen articles? Questions or comments?
Given the fact that House Counsel gave some advice on the language,
Yes.
do we feel there's any greater likelihood that this will pass?
Well, I think I would say this, there's no less. Whether or not there's more, I suppose you would have to take the pulse on the day that it gets proposed. So it's, I know it's been tried up there as a whole, but they can't get it across the board. I think going the home rule petition is our best opportunity to try to provide it.
I think we have a good argument.
Any questions or comments from residents for Chairman Walsh or on any of these articles? Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you. Good night.
You too. Which leads us to the planning board articles, all of which we have heard on before at public hearing. Abby, since you are here, are there any changes that you want to make us aware of?
No, there's been no changes from what you've seen at your earlier hearing in March. So what you have before you is the planning board's articles as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions from FinCom members on the planning board articles? I know we've heard them before, but any other questions or concerns? Any questions or comments from residents? Of course, I see you now. Sorry, I hadn't seen you before. Path is here also, along with other planning board members. Thank you. Any questions or comments? I see none. I hear none. I think we are now through all the articles. So at this point, the public hearing portion of our meeting is concluded, and we will continue our meeting to discuss and vote on the articles. I want to thank everyone for being here, and it's been a lot of work to get to this point this year with the help of so many people. So thank you all for being here and your contributions. All right. Does anyone want to take a break for a couple minutes before we start? I see no. Okay. Oh. Mike, go ahead.
Get back.
We'll wait. Yeah, they'll be renumbered anyway. So the first one for the appropriation of $135,000. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to
I'll
approve.
second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Moving along to the second sewer commission article, appropriations of $666,000 for sewer capital improvements. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
That's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? It's a unanimous vote in favor. Moving along to Board of Selectmen articles, supplemental appropriations for FY16. $425,000 for snow and ice. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Moving on to supplemental appropriations, FY16 article for $421,000 as stated. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. There's an article for unpaid prior year bills. There's nothing there. And just for folks who are new, sometimes there are changes that come up before town meeting, in which case we sometimes have a very brief meeting before town meeting to vote as necessary. But thus far, we are unaware that would be necessary. The next one, FY17 salary and expense budgets. Is there a motion? Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been seconded. Discussion.
Can I just say I'd like to thank the group that met 2 weeks ago and kind of came up with a solution on so that the school budget is not, the base is not going to be as high as it was, which will help with us some stabilization of that and being able to sustain going forward. Pat and I especially did a great job of getting that resolved. And Pam.
Well, and you kept the school committee going after Akbar.
Well, yeah, they almost adjourned without voting your budget.
Well, you know, this has obviously been a lot of work by a lot of people. Barb, great job. All of you, schools, and Mike, Long Range, and a lot of people working together to make this happen. So the point is going forward. Any further discussion on the budget? Mike, any last words?
The only last one I'll make on this is that we're appropriating enough taxes to pay for the entire expense budget here, and we know that there's estimates in here, but we have $800,000 for the university station, or sorry, for the police station. We know that's going to be $100,000 less, so that ought to form the free cash at the end. And as I said last week, it wouldn't surprise me if there's $1 million of extra local receipts that flows in. So our free cash might be, you know, again, sitting there at $4 million when it's next certified. So that's good news. We should tax relief on the schedule next year as well.
I am also appreciative of all of the work that everyone has done to put into the budget, and my only concern, and I'm going to vote for the budget. My only concern, however, is that when we talk about building the police station outside of Proposition 2.5 with debt service that we've already incurred, and it's already part of the operating budget. When we added that debt service to the budget originally, it was under Proposition 2.5. It was, people were allowed to vote on that outside of the budget with the high school and the library and those types of things. So that is the only piece that I think we might hear some pushback on town meeting floor.
Does the town have to vote on any borrowing?
It'll still be a separate
Yeah,
house.
they still have separate articles.
Oh, where is the separate?
It's way back.
Well, then I'll say it again then. So, well, but that's my concern with all this. We can move on and then talk about it then.
Gary, I just one question, I'm not sure this is the place to include it, but I looked at John, I would assume this write-up, these slides were from Johnny and Timothy.
Yes.
The one question I have, to be honest with you, is that third slide, and I'm just wondering, where would be appropriate for us? I mean, he raises the whole issue of long-term capital. The point I made earlier on, is there some place in our write-up somewhere where we can strongly encourage them to work with the rest of the town on this capital budget development process? So if we can, I just think they would be so much better off if they had a wider involvement, it was vetted thoroughly. And think of the process we go through here versus, to be honest with you, all of a sudden doing it on their own. It creates controversy within their own world, and then obviously it's very hard for the rest of us to get involved in it. So I don't know where, but even he himself was raising the hand here. And I just wondered, is it appropriate at some point in our write-up to encourage them to work with the municipal side on resolving and figuring out what their capital needs are? That's probably the biggest unknown as far as I'm concerned in our capital plans looking forward.
Well, there are a couple things that you talk about there. One of them is, you know, what type of committee? Do they have like a public safety committee looking at that? But then also how they, it's not going to be something that's done in 1 year. So how is it going to be going in?
It's as much process as anything else.
Well, I think that's what really has come out of this budget discussion is that I think John was saying, you know, I don't like this process, I want to go through this process. So rather than try to get that process part done before town meeting, they got the numbers done and they're going to start looking at the process.
Right.
So that it's going to be done sooner. But I could certainly, I mean, I haven't done the write-up yet. So anything that.
I don't know where the right point to do it is, but I just thought it was such a critical point and such an impact on us on a long-term basis. Come out of long-range financial planning, as far as I'm concerned, to come in our introductory comments. But I think we have an opportunity to sort of reach out and say.
Well, he and Heath are on the long range. He and Heath are on the long range.
I know, but I'm just suggesting. I think I'm almost encouraged to support this as much as the whoever superintendent does.
You know, under the risks, one of them is their capital needs, and then definitely, to the extent that, you know, if you want to give me some input of how you like it worded, but I definitely in the write-up.
I was sort of opening up and saying, I don't even know where the right place to do this, but I think we have an opportunity here, and he even sort of raised it himself in his own write-up. That just struck me as maybe a way to say, hey, you know, leverage the expertise that's been developed in town. The benefits to them are, it will broaden their, frankly, support as far as I'm concerned, if they have a much more open process. At the end of the day, the need's there. Okay, and I'm just saying, how do they generate as much support as they can as they go through the process? I don't know where the best place to say it is.
Point well taken. Any other questions, issues?
And I'll make a motion then to.
It's actually been
okay.
Seconded already. I just want to make sure.
All in favor, fine.
I just want to make sure everyone's had a chance. And everybody's comfortable voting?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Mike's abstaining. Okay. Great. Moving on, $850,100 municipal capital budget. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
To approve?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous, we're in favor. Next, the school capital budget, $885,050. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second? Any further discussion?
I do have further details,
Okay.
if anybody wants any more information on it. The technology is pretty much for replacing the Chromebooks. And there's a little bit of roofing for Hamlin. The boiler at middle school in Sheehan, so.
Adding Chromebooks or
Replacing Chromebooks. They have Chromebooks 8th through 12th grade, so it's the process of kids getting this, kind of, well, they were getting this freshmen, and then, so by the time they're seniors, they're pretty old, so that it's replacing. And then, under the FF&E that is here as well, that's for introducing it into the 7th graders.
Thanks, Laura. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Next are other capital improvements, $750,000 for high school turf field and track. Lease purchase to begin the process of replacing fire engines, $750,000. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Next is allocation to stabilization fund, $100,000. Is there a motion to approve? Make a motion to approve. Seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Next is an allocation of $1,350,000 to the OPEB liability trust fund. Is there a motion to approve, Pete? Let's give you that. And the second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Next is the police station headquarters article. And the point has been raised, I just want to mention this, that this article does not mention the price tag. And we had looked, by way of reference, I just want to just comment on this for a moment, that when we did the fire station, the article was written in a very similar way, and then our motion was to recommend that the town appropriate up to $8 million to pay the cost of constructing the fire station. So that number would be in our, actually what we're voting. And I think we can use the price that they give us. We've got to do it first.
Does that become binding?
Does that become binding?
I don't understand why not be binding or they can't put it in the article.
There was some discussion about that. I mean, I can read what Mike said about that.
I think, I mean, they had the bid number for a little while, so.
Well, we just figured out last year.
Yeah.
Well, I think the number had changed. I'll just read you what we got from Mike Gillette today, which says, the police station article did not include a price in order to keep options open, similar to the Islington Fire Station article last year, although we have a range of price estimates, 14 to 16 million, a price is not written into the warrant article in order to avoid the possibility of exceeding the scope of the article. If the actual amount needed to fund the construction exceeded the amount written into the article, the actual appropriation needed could be found to exceed the scope of the article, be deemed not eligible for a vote. I'm reading this literally. Keeping the actual sum blank, as was done for the Islington Fire Station last year, allows the Finance Commission to consider and vote on the amount needed based on the bid price, and to submit that amount in the wording of its article.
Are they gonna then give us that exact number then before town meeting like we did last year and vote, or?
I think the exact number is
Is what they
bid.
did.
Right, but it's, they've known that number for a week or more, so you would think he'd be able to give us a set number. So,
This is what we got today.
I know, that's what I'm saying, I think we shouldn't put a number in that.
Is it definitely that contractor, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the low bid was the one they wanted to.
So that's finalized, that it's that person?
But they've told us it's gonna be within 2.5. If we don't put a number in, it exceeds the amount in the required 2.5 vote.
I don't understand the response why it's not in the article, and if it's not in the article, if we put it in our write-up, does that then become binding?
We just have opinions to give guidance to the town meetings. I don't think our vote is binding on anybody.
The article was binding, which has
Yeah.
no cap on it. That's what,
Right, but if we say in our write-up, we voted for it up to X amount of dollars, I think then the town meeting has to guide us to where we're coming from, but we don't change the town meeting warrant article.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what we wrote last year. Even on the fall meeting of the Deerfield Avenue extension, and I'm looking at the article, and then I think in our write-up, we included the
I have it
funding.
right here, George.
Yeah, 400, we 400 for the scout house, which specifically said up to 2.1 million of funding is what we did. So I think, and then yet the town article didn't have the numbers there. So I think we should take the same approach and include a number. I believe it should be what they said, but I'd like to sort of be absolutely sure that what were we given tonight? 13,225?
So town meeting votes on our motion.
Yeah.
So our motion will be, we recommend spending up to 13 to 250, whatever the
Whatever
exact
the
number
number
is.
We can vote to approve or definitely postpone, we don't get to modify it through our recommendation, right? So this language says.
Our recommendation is that.
Yeah, they're voting on this article, not our modifications, but otherwise we could modify, we could redline every motion in here if we wanted to, we can't do
No, but
that.
that's the way the article was. I'm looking at the articles that were written last year. That's the way they were.
Oh, I understand
Right,
that's.
I don't recall what our discussion
But
was
George,
around that.
I don't know if it was last year, or if it was the Deerfield thing, or if it was Islington Fire Station, but we did have an amended warrant article from the town meeting floor verbally read last year.
Because the bids on the fire station, the bid came in higher.
Came in higher, that's right.
Let me go look at.
But I think on that one, though, if I may, I mean, that, on that one, it was, that number, we voted on that number. We didn't vote on a random number, we had that like emergency meeting right before.
Yeah, that's right.
To bump it from 8 to 8.8 million.
Right.
And so we were voting on a number, not on the concept.
That's right, well, this year says to appropriate a sum of money.
Right, so this is a concept, not a
Yeah,
count,
right, I don't know, I think it needs to be more precise.
Well, that's what the fire station article said.
Yeah.
The article was to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to pay costs of
That's right.
constructing the Islington Fire Station. And then, instead of just saying, we recommend that the town so vote, it said the Finance and Warrants Commission, by unanimous vote of those present, recommends that the town appropriate up to $8 million to pay costs of constructing the Islington Fire Station. So I think because it's left vague for the reasons that Mike has articulated here, that with all due respect, I don't completely
Because I'd asked Tom Custer that question, he didn't want.
Nora, do you have any?
I know Tom was involved in the drafting of the original of the fire station and for Deerfield Avenue, he was consulted on this and thought that that was the right procedure. If there was ever a question at town meeting, that someone questioned whether the article was appropriate, the article could be amended to take the amount out of your motion and put it into an amended article. I don't think that was found necessary in the past, so the article was voted for a sum of money with everyone who was voting understanding that the sum was the amount of the bid and that the town could not enter a different amount, that we were going forward with the bid that was accepted. By the time we get to town meeting, that bid and all the sub-bids will all be very specific. They will have the name of the contractor and the subcontractor and the dollar amounts for everyone to see. But if there's a concern that it needs to be in the article, it could be amended on the town meeting floor. So I would recommend you do the same thing you did for the fire station for Deerfield Avenue and include the dollar amount in your motion.
And maybe be prepared to answer some a question that might come from the public and how, why it was set up that way.
Well, I think in fairness, when they drafted this article, they didn't have this option.
Right.
So the reason we have the language we have is because this was drafted back in
Before they
January.
got the funding.
When they had the bids.
Yeah, if the implication is, if we say, we recommend this article on the basis of having been represented that the cost is $13.2 million, and if it is something higher than that, then we may withdraw or modify our recommendation, and if we still have time and the ability to modify our, not recommendation, but our motion, because this is our motion, we move to approve it. If it came in at 18, we might not move to approve it. So as long as we reserve the right to change our motion, that seems like it work.
I can write that. So, I mean, that was my understanding, frankly, the way it worked for the library, the way it worked for the Islington Fire Station, the way it worked for the Deerfield Avenue extension. So I will put the language in there. I can make sure that people understand what our vote is based upon the number. Frankly, the good news is the bids are in now.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an issue.
I don't think it is an issue, but I'll write it, I'll put it, I know what you want done, and I'll write that in there. For Mary Ann, the treasurer.
Well, and we should agree on what the language of our motion is here
The
before.
third, I don't have that. Does anybody have marked copies?
No.
The amount is 13,205.
But there's also, she talked also about a contingency above that, and it probably would be wise to have a higher number than that in our.
Okay.
Because that was at 687 in annual estimated principal and interest amortization, and they budgeted 800, and that was fine. So in theory, there should be some cushion above that, at least the 10% contingency that she talked about.
Would that be
That's-
the range?
that's-
I think the
I believe that's
the
13.
contingency of about $1 million was in that.
Well, there's 10,087 in construction
Right.
costs and 13,200, that also includes design.
I think it includes
So we,
I mean, I'd go higher, but the contingency was in the 13. Yeah,
Maybe we
it was
go-
listed in there, it's about $1 million.
that was listed in
It
it.
was listed in that list, but I would still think we'd want to go higher,
Well,
but
what was the range that she said, in the range, and we came in below that range?
It was originally
Range
14 to
13,
16.
So you want to do the bottom number of the range?
Up to 14 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. But I'm gonna write it to, we do up to, I will make it more specific in our write-up. Okay, in other words, if we have not to exceed, I'm still gonna say that our primary vote is based upon.
And you can all.
I think maybe what we should try and do is find out like why it's not in the article, and then if we put it in our motion, what actual effect does that have? And if it has any effect, then we can figure out what the dollar amount is.
When we get together to vote again.
Well, we can vote now. I defer to George on that. A motion to approve the article, but the final write-up,
Yeah.
I defer to George.
Okay.
So delegate to George.
Yeah.
All right, so can I make
To
that
figure out the
right?
mechanics
All right, but,
and what those mechanics actually
Ray,
are.
let's make sure I understand. I'll do that. I want to check out the
Yeah.
right assignment here. There should be some number not to exceed, which might be a little bit more than the actual number they have in front of them right now. Is that what I'm hearing here? Just to give.
I'm not sure if that's necessary, because they might have a final bid that's
Okay,
that's
all
a
right.
real number. I think that's another question to ask.
Let me just reread this, because I think it is helpful. This is from Mike Gillette. He said, keeping the actual sum blank in the article they wrote, as was done for the fire station, allows the Finance Commission to consider and vote on the amount needed based on the bid price, and to submit that amount in the wording of its article. So I think what's.
The 13.
It's really our
Right, so I
representation.
think what's intended is that we vote on the bid,
Okay.
what's up or down.
All right,
Because
that's
that's
fine with
what's
me.
presented to us,
And
it's
it's-
inclusive. But I think, and to write up our recommendation, including that number.
Yes, okay. I'm fine with
I'm
that.
a little uncomfortable, going up to 14,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
okay.
$800,000
I
that
think we vote on
of justification for.
So I think the number is 13.
205.
Okay, let's just do that. I'm fine with that.
So any further discussion? Actually, we need to have the motion stated properly, but before we actually we can just do the motion. Do you want to make the motion, George?
I'll make the motion that we will recommend to approve based upon bid number received of 13,205,000, which will be included in our write-up. Okay?
I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion, Pete?
Could I have 5 minutes? I know everyone wants to go home, but I think this is an important issue. Could I have just 5 minutes before we vote? I'm not trying to sway anyone's vote, but I think it's related to this vote.
Good.
It's about climate change.
That Nobody bought cookies.
No, that is not
August 13th.
Works
Shop
every
actually.
time. Where are those cookies?
So, we're voting, I'm gonna vote in favor. I'm not trying to talk everyone out of voting for this, I'm in favor of this. I think it's important for us to realize we are voting on infrastructure that's gonna be pumping a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere for the next 50 years. This is a report from the National Academy of Sciences and the Royal Society of England, two of the most esteemed scientific organizations in the world. Climate change is one of the defining issues of our time. It is now more certain than ever, based on many lines of evidence, that humans are changing Earth's climate. The atmosphere and oceans are formed, accompanied by sea level rise, a strong decline in Arctic sea ice, and other climate-related changes. The evidence is clear. Scientific information is a vital component of the evidence required for societies to make sensible policy decisions. Climate change science will continue to help society make informed decisions that will reduce the magnitude of climate change and adapt to its impact. So, Massachusetts in 2008 passed what they call the Global Warming Solutions Act, and it called on a 25% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2025 and an 80% reduction by 2050. That's only 34 years away, right? Our CO2 emissions are just going through the roof. In the town of Westwood, even with the work that Tom Phillips has been doing to incorporate energy efficiency, our energy consumption, our CO2 emissions just keep going up. And I don't think that's acceptable. I think we have to start planning for this. We talked a lot about sustainability in the last meeting, sustainability of our budgets, but we're avoiding this issue. We can't keep kicking this down the road. I think it's important. 50% of the emissions in Massachusetts are from buildings. New buildings, it's easy to do something about that. Old buildings, it's really tough. So the last few buildings that we've built, the library, the fire station, this police station, are nowhere near as energy efficient as they could be. So I think that the town needs to start doing something about this. We can't keep ignoring this. The evidence is just overwhelming. And the problem is they don't know at what point it's going to become irreversible. These changes, the things that are happening now, such as all the meltwater from Greenland going into the North Atlantic, they really don't know at what point this becomes irreversible. A lot of these changes are positive feedback loops where, for instance, ice melting up in the Arctic, who cares if ice is melting in the Atlantic, right? How does that affect us? Well, it does affect us because ice and snow reflect light. And without that ice, you now have dark water, which means it absorbs energy from the sun, it heats up, and that melts more ice. So it's this kind of positive feedback loop. The reason the temperature of the Earth has been fairly stable for the last 10,000 years is because the amount of energy coming in from the sun is balanced by the amount of energy radiating back out to space. CO2 upsets that balance. CO2 absorbs infrared radiation and prevents a portion of the heat that would normally radiate back out to space. So that balance is totally out of whack right now because of all the CO2 emissions. The amount that's off is the equivalent to 400,000 Hiroshima-sized bombs going off every day. 400,000 Hiroshima bombs a day. That's the energy imbalance right now. We are really putting our kids at risk if we continue to emit CO2 at the rate at which we're doing it now. We have to stop. We have to change the way we're doing things. We do not need to burn oil, coal, or gas to heat our buildings. I know a commercial building is much more difficult than a residence, but I live in a house that I designed and built that uses less energy than it produces. I'm sorry, yeah. We end up with a 2,000 kilowatt hour surplus of energy, and that includes heat, hot water, all our energy needs. It's not rocket science. It's not that difficult to do. It means extra levels of insulation and super efficient equipment. So I tried hard to get folks to consider a ground source heat pump. Unfortunately, I did not push hard enough at the beginning. It's my fault. I take complete responsibility for this, but I think we should have put a ground source heat pump in. The temperature of the ground is 50 degrees year round. The building would have been about 14 to 15% more energy efficient. It would have used electricity that could have been produced through solar panels or a wind turbine. So there's a lot of things that we could have done in this building. What I'd really like to make sure of is the next building, especially if it's a school. It should be built to much, much higher energy standards than in this building. I've heard people say that this building is 30% higher than base code. Well, with the stretch code, by law, it has to be at least 20% better. So it's really only about 10% better than what the stretch code requires. So I'm going to vote for this mainly because it was the selectmen at least went back and looked at this. I give them a lot of credit for taking the time, talking to the engineers, and going back and reviewing this. Unfortunately, with the bid process and public buildings and things like that, it would have been very expensive, very difficult to incorporate it at this late date. So my fault for not really pushing sooner. But I really think that this is a serious, serious problem that, and it's related to the police station in that we are putting in infrastructure that is going to emit hundreds of thousands of pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. And it could have been avoided. I'll shut up.
Can I ask a question? I thought that, I know that there aren't solar panels going in now, but I thought that the infrastructure was set up and all that. We will be able to do that in the future.
Well, this is the southern exposure of the building. I just got this in about 3 weeks ago. They did make sure the structure of the roof is going to be strong enough for solar panels. They did do some of that, and I give them a lot of credit for that. However, they ended up putting a dormer right in the middle of the south-facing roof. There's a tower, an antenna tower that's on the south side that's going to shade the panels and impact input or output of those panels. We're not taking advantage of the southern exposure. There's basically no windows there for daylighting or passive solar gain. So there's all kinds of things that could have been done, I think, a little better. Overall, they did up the insulation, but they only went to R30 instead of R40 on the roof. The calculations are based on really low gas prices now. Right now, prices are low for natural gas. I think in the future, we're bound to see higher prices. Also, they designed for a certain temperature, base temperature, both in the winter and summer. And what the scientists are saying is that we're going to see much, much higher temperatures in the summer. We're going to have many days in the 90s, over 100. I think just putting an extra inch of insulation in the roof would be prudent, but it was deemed uneconomical to do that. And I really think that we've got to, we're going to have to figure out in the next 10 or 20 years how to basically get away from burning fossil fuels in buildings, cars, everything. They did say that they would look at possibly changing some things to make it easier so that we can add a ground source heat pump in the future, which is great. I think that would be really, really good thing to do. So,
Pete, I think this process has only benefited from your involvement, and we appreciate the work that you've done as our energy liaison. And I know that you really pushed and you've made a difference, so only kudos to you for what you've done. And thank you for helping to educate us and keep us constantly aware of these issues.
thanks for listening.
Your passion is infectious, so thank you. Any other discussion before we vote? Any other concerns? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, it's unanimous vote in favor. Yes.
Staff members of the planning board waiting for their articles. Do you want to jump over?
Historical, but we can skip, we can leave historical commission for the end, Marjorie.
We find this very interesting, so.
Very what?
Yeah, we're just here because we're interested. What's going on?
Okay, so we'll skip the historical commission for the moment. Okay, so, we still have the other board of selectmen stuff, we'll just go straight to planning board. Although you're welcome to stay afterwards.
We also invite you to our meetings.
That's okay. That's okay.
I enjoy those meetings.
Of course you do, Marcia. All right. Yep, so page 17. So this is amendments related to senior housing, section 8.3, open space residential development, OSRD, senior residential development, SRD, and residential retirement community, RRC. Is there a motion?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been seconded. Further discussion?
I'd just like to say that I appreciate the fact that they worked on this even though we did not support their moratorium last year, and that still they made a lot of progress on this. So.
Marjorie, do you have anything you want to say on this?
No, I did hear public comment that they thought, members of the public thought that the article as it is now for senior residential was in good shape. And I did take that in, but I think the planning board has had a lot of difficulty on their end of implementing it. And we need it to be a process that works for everyone well, and I think they've worked really hard to make that happen.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous vote in favor. Moving on. It's a long one. Okay, brings us to page 34. Amendments to allow outdoor seating as an accessory use, section 4.3.1. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. The next planning board article is on page 36, amendments relating to calculating the required affordable units, section 9.5.14, et cetera. Is there a motion
Make a motion
to approve?
to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Brings us to the next motion, it's article rather, it's on page 38. Amendments to allow administrative review for minor alterations of existing wireless facilities, new section 9.4.5. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. And seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. The next article is also on page 38, amendments related to joint off-street parking. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. And then we have housekeeping amendments, those are on page 40. Is there a motion to approve?
Make the motion to approve. Second.
And that's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. That brings us to page 42, amendments to project area in the FMUOD. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make
Motion to approve?
second.
And seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, that concludes the planning board articles. We want to thank Abby and Chris, all of the members of the planning board. Thank you very much for all the great work you do and your patience with us. Nora, thank you for helping on these as always. Okay, so we still have some more to do, folks. Thank you. The Historical Commission demolition bylaw. Is there a motion, first of all?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
What did she say?
Motion to approve, that's been seconded, okay. Discussion. Marjorie?
Thank you. I want to say that I think Peter worked really hard to accommodate everything that he heard from all of us. Personally, I can't support it. I think it's written in a manner that in order for them to be able to either preserve or document property, they've left it as open as possible for them to hopefully achieve that goal and be as unobtrusive as possible. So I want to say that on their behalf. But people can voluntarily do it. And I'm not comfortable with the idea of taking away people's rights in their, or delaying people's rights in their property for 6 months. There is a line in here that the board will take, the commission will take into consideration hardship, financial or otherwise, of anyone that might be affected by this. However, there's no guidelines on that. I don't know how they've been written guidelines, but this is, and it's that commission. I have a lot of faith in the current commission. We don't know who the commission's going to be down the road. And there's going to be carrying, there could be a situation where somebody's in a hardship, they're going to have carrying costs, et cetera. And if someone volunteered, we also had residents talk about how precious their property was to them. Clearly, they would voluntarily do this. And so for that reason, I can't support it, those reasons.
Can I ask a question? I thought he said he tried to accommodate those things you brought up.
He has, and I was very clear with him during the discussion that probably I wouldn't end up supporting it, but that we had a great rapport, that these were the things that would probably make it much more towards what had been sought previously, but it still didn't end up to be something I can support.
But my understanding is this goes a lot further than what a lot of other towns have done.
It does.
So I think he has made, my understanding is he's made remarkable attempts to accommodate some of the issues raised.
I believe he has, I said that, George. I think he's done a lot of work to try and make this as accommodating as possible while still hopefully achieve his goal.
I think the issue is that she's got a
Philosophical.
philosophical
I don't want
difference.
you to speak for me.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks. My issue is that I think that if someone owns a historical property and that person chooses to do preservation or to do documentation, then they have that choice. For us to say that they must, and that we are going to put them into a 6-month delay, is something I can't support.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? Stop me if I'm not. One of the other things is that, and I am speaking for you here, but stop me, that if it does pass, there've been so many improvements made to it, and I think that was, I know that was one of my issues last year, was that there were a lot of faults with the article, and I think there've been a lot of improvements to the article, so that if somebody doesn't particularly like it, but it does pass, it's not as, it's in a better position than, you know.
But someone is still subject to a 6-month delay
Right.
unless they knew to go get a predetermination. And if something happens in somebody's life where suddenly they must sell their property, and they are now subject to a 6-month delay, and although there is a hardship line in there, that is a subjective line that's going to be up to that commission that's presently sitting at that time.
But I think you've got to be very careful here in the sense that we all have our own personal biases. And I would say part of me might believe that I understand property rights. On the other hand, you sort of got to take a larger collective view. A lot of communities around here have done this. I think the intent is very well intended. There is an attempt to preserve some of the beautiful, properties in the town. And I personally think that Peter really bended it backwards to accommodate, frankly, more than I thought he would be able to. And that's the point I want to make. So I think if you take a larger perspective, it could be you have your own individual biases. I think you got to step back and look what this historic commission is trying to achieve and how accommodating he's been in the article he's written. And I think that's the way you got to approach it. And we're frankly a little bit
This of isn't an a outlier position now. of personal bias on my part. This is a position about property rights. People have the right, and I don't appreciate it being
Well, I
put
actually,
that
okay,
way.
then I actually am a little surprised you worked as closely as you did with him, having to bend over backwards to accommodate, and you're opposing his articles.
He reached out to me,
So,
and I worked with him.
okay, but I guess I think he's very well intended in terms of what he's done.
I don't think he's not well intended, George.
Everybody.
And I think Marjorie is very well intended in what she was very open
Thank
with
you,
him
Barb.
about what she did. I mean, it's an area that she's very concerned about, but wanted to make sure that if it did get approved, it met a lot of her issues.
I think the general board's issues, I don't think
Yeah.
it was just my issues. These were raised across the board by the commission last year, is my understanding.
Please.
I'm going to speak in favor of it, of the motion, and here's why. I think, I said all this last year too, but I think it's more true this year. Every regulation, bylaw of any sort is some limitation on your personal freedom to do whatever you want. And that goes from, you can't kill somebody to you can't dump, things into your storm drain, or you can't sell your house exactly when you want to. There's all types of restrictions on freedom when you put in any kind of law or regulation. The question is does it further in this case, town objective, and does it do it in a logically connected way, in as narrow a way as possible? Does it limit the intrusion in as narrow a way as possible? We talked about this last year. Some people might feel there's no value in preserving historical buildings. I don't know that I care necessarily personally, but as I said last year, I mean, if you don't care about historical buildings in Massachusetts, then you don't care about them in the United States. And with this is our brand in Massachusetts. We said the same exact thing last year. So I get to the point where I say, okay, I think it's an important, or at least it's something I understand people can view as an important governmental objective. And then secondly, is it logically related? Yeah, they're not saying you can't sell it. They're saying, slow it down, let's think about it. Give us some time to consider whether it should be preserved, find another buyer, or you might change your mind or whatever. And then the question is, all these things that you brought up, Marjorie, which are completely, make tons of sense, and weren't there last year, frankly. And I supported it last year. I think have narrowed the amount of intrusion this year. I think to your point, if it's a hardship, there is a provision for it. If you have an old house, you likely know, first of all, there's only so many of them, they're on a registry. You likely know about it. There's a provision here where you can get it predetermined. So it seems to me that the intrusion on the freedom has been narrowed smartly, in large part due to your help. So I supported it last year, but I support it more this year. And I really think some of the rough edges that were on it last year were really well smoothed off by the FinCom and by you particularly this year, so that's why it's.
Any further thoughts or discussion? So the motion was to approve. That's the motion before you. So are you ready to vote? All in favor to approve? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Marjorie, Mike, Craig. Who's writing your name? Barb is, and maybe we ask Marjorie for you to
We do want to.
work, well, maybe,
Oh, yes,
maybe work with
absolutely.
Barb.
Absolutely.
No abstentions, right? You're gonna write in the.
No, I'm not doing my vote, just to work so that you've got.
Oh,
clear
yeah, I'll work with you, I'll
explanation,
make sure, yeah. I think
we're-
I know
I think
you
we're
do.
good.
I think we're good on this.
I think that was a very good discussion, and it's nice to see that our input was heard. Okay, so we've just got a few more folks. We're speeding along, like 20 minutes of 10. There are a couple more. Get to the page, what page am I on? 11, thank you. Okay, Board of Selectmen articles, street acceptance.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous vote in favor. Next is, again, these are on page 11, road improvements. Is there a motion? Motion to approve? Seconded. Seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous vote in favor. Next is accept local option hotel tax increase. Is there a motion to approve? Second. That's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That's unanimous vote in favor. Next, appropriate free cash to specifically reduce the tax rate. This is the $500,000.
Motion to approve. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous vote in favor. Next is the home rule petition to appropriate funds to be aid to the elderly trust fund for foods. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? Marjorie?
Go ahead.
I
Jim?
think Margaret and I are maybe on the same page. Yeah, I have to speak against this one. I mean, I think it's well-meaning and it's altruistic, but when we're asking other taxpayers to pay the taxes of another individual, I think we've, gone a little too far. I mean, the ultimate beneficiary of this is the heirs or the kids of the elderly person we're intending to help, someone who theoretically has no contact to the city of Westwood. I think it becomes fiscally irresponsible for us to spend the money in that way. I mean, we would have whatever dollar amount we approve could be better off spent on Peter's energy efficiency or Peter's OPEB or the school budget or something like that. And of course, part of the argument is the tax is too high. Well, we're now increasing other people's taxes to pay for a second person's taxes, and as taxes go up every year, do we have to dig deeper into the pot or put more into the pot? And where does it stop?
Jim, can you explain what you mean when you say it's the kids that are going to benefit?
Well, there's no way of collecting the, we as the town are paying for the elderly's taxes, and there's no means of collecting that tax. So that individual will pass away, leave their house to their family with no tax burden. And ultimately, there are other means of passing this on. We could put a lien on the property and just not collect on it, and when they pass away, you can get your money back. But the way it's set up now is that's a gift to that homeowner, and the family's going to come in, and their house is going to be fully paid off. The taxpayer is going to be left with the burden, and the town of Westwood gets nothing for its investment.
It's my understanding on this article that the reason that the funds were going to this is a vehicle we currently have in place to pay for elders' taxes, but it's a voluntary vehicle where people are making charitable contributions. If we're now taking everyone's dollars and putting them towards this charity, but there's no recoupment, and they can't change the vehicle that exists because it's an existing vehicle that had to be approved back whenever this was approved, the aid to the elderly and disabled fund. So they can't, that's the vehicle we've got to put it in, but we have no recoupment clause, and it will be exactly what you were saying. Because there is no way to leave, et cetera. So somebody is paying taxes on the average 500 plus property, and then their kids inherit it, free and clear of that prior tax burden.
I think you ultimately have the law with unintended consequences. I think people can choose which charity to give it to. In this town, you have WEF and WESC and some of the others, and if they're mandated to give to a voluntary charity, the other charities in town may suffer.
This is a question, but I haven't heard, is there a specific means test? I've heard that they do, and the current program uses just an evaluation, but there's no specific means test, and I don't think there's any specific means test in this. So I'm uncomfortable with someone making a decision without some specific guidelines.
As Marjorie said, it goes into the fund that's already established, and I believe the established funds have some sort of mean testing. I don't know how subjective or objective it is, and I don't know who makes that decision, but it's clearly out of our hands at that point.
This, by the letter, says simply, two residents who are over the age of 60 or who are disabled.
Maybe I'll get, I'm sorry.
My recollection of the discussion around this issue is that the person today who receives a benefit from this is 88 plus years old, been in the town 60 plus years, or some crazy numbers like that. You know, I look at this as more of a, you know, helping those who may not be able to help themselves, who don't have the financial means to make that payment. I understand completely those that may benefit from this down the road, but given its limited scope, if you will, and those that will be impacted by it, I think that it is well intended.
Well, again, it's well intended, but I think it's misplaced. I mean, there are families who aren't in this age bracket or financial bracket who also have financial problems. And if we're putting the burden on them, where does that break down? I mean, there are families who aren't eligible who are paying for sports for their kids or extra academics, and they have their own financial problems. And we're just passing the buck to them. And if we're, again, the whole issue has been the taxes are too high, so if I'm paying for somebody else's taxes, it just makes my taxes even higher.
This is just giving us, it's giving the town the right to put money into it by vote. This isn't actually, there's no dollar amount associated with this. This is just going over and saying, now the town has the ability to vote towards putting money towards that, which would then have to come before the town and then whenever the town wants to put money towards this for free cash, whatever, the town would have to vote on that, and this is just giving that vehicle that option. Is that reading that correctly?
Yes, that's right. It's actually even more removed from that because it's a home rule petition, it's got to go to the legislature. So it still has to get approved there before it would ever come back, and the likelihood of getting approved, I guess, is not high.
But do you think that they don't want to fund it?
Oh, no, they want to fund it, no, I agree.
And just to further Paul's point, then, you know, it goes to the town to decide whether they want to give the funds to the 88-year-old folks who, you know, would like to pay their own bill and are having trouble doing so, been in town for 60 years.
And I think the other issue is that, I think as the decisions were made and we looked at the allocation, I think as Pam pointed out up front, in terms of some of the priorities we heard about from residents, tax relief is clearly one. And I think the one vehicle is the $500,000 of free cash that allows us to do that on an annual basis. It's not a long-term commitment. This is just another vehicle, and I think you pointed out, all you need is no money's attached to it. But I think we've heard loud and clear that people are looking for some form of tax release. And I know we've struggled with the fact, at the end of the day, on the one hand, it's fairly de minimis. On the other hand, it's very important to people to know that it's a need we're trying to address. And I think the the two vehicles, one is obviously using free cash, we have to make that decision the other, of each year. The other one is a way of saying, hey, there are some people really, really in need in this town, and, you know, is there a way to address it?
I'm all in favor of tax relief, but not at the expense of another taxpayer.
Just to clarify something too, is a lot of these people, when you talk about qualifying, a lot of these people are people that are on the work program that are now too elderly or disabled to be able to do the work program that they had done through town hall to give some tax relief. The other thing was that, from what the assessor said, they're kind of at the maximum for the number of people that are doing kind of the deferred taxes and getting the lien, that you don't want to have that number to be too big. I think the alternative for people is to do a reverse mortgage. I think the town is kind of tapped out as to how much they want on the kind of the non-performing asset side, which essentially it is if you've got the lien.
No,
I guess I think of it, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I've spoken up.
No, just thinking about people's thoughts, you know, I think as people get older, their families aren't nearby, and they're trying to upkeep their house, to me, this helps. A little bit of tax relief that maybe they'll keep their homes in better repair, and we don't have seniors moving to a place where their homes are becoming dilapidated. That's not gonna help the residents or people in the neighborhood. So I see it as kind of some of the neediest, and I agree with everything you've said, Jim, but I think it does have a give back effect to people that live in, we all live in and around, perhaps people that are getting this. And I think it behooves more than just the senior. I think it helps the community at large to support it.
I'm too all in favor of tax relief and of protecting our elderly, but the monies that may or may not be appropriated, should this be approved, could go to the overall tax relief, and I think that that was the point of everyone's tax relief. And if this was a vehicle that allowed for recoupment through leaning, I would be in favor of this, but that is not what this fund does. So it's taking people's money and putting them into something and then never being able to get it back, versus people voluntarily being able to make their contributions to this fund.
But the people are gonna have to vote to put them in there.
Right.
So it's going to be the decision of the town, if any money goes in there. And I'll just make the point, we've got an article, we just voted at $500,000 for everybody. I mean, I think you're talking about small amounts of money going to people who really need it the most and who have no ability to bring in an income anymore. I think, you know, as FinCom, I don't want to take away personally the ability for the town to vote for this or to dissuade them. I'd rather, I mean, obviously they will vote, but.
We're not taking away their vote.
Yeah, no, I know, I said that inaccurately. Well, is there any further, yeah?
I think just real quick, the concern I had when I first heard it was that some of the people that are getting this money don't want to do the deferred taxes because they don't want to do deferred taxes. And I think that bothered me probably the most, that you should defer, you know, you should be able to defer the taxes so that the other citizens, you know, get their money back later on. They'll front you for now. And it's not an estate issue that passes on to the family. That money should come back to the taxpayers. And I think that bothered me a lot. I have a father who could qualify for this, and the beneficiary of him qualifying would be me when he sells his house, and I don't think that's right. I'm going to vote for it, but I do think there's a lot of funding questions down the road that need to be addressed. If deferring taxes, we have enough of it, I would rather us take money from this fund and allow us to defer more taxes for people that can't pay their taxes who are over 80 or over whatever age, and use the money. So I think I'm going to vote for it because I'd like us to be able to do something, but I do think we need to raise the question of, there's lots of questions on the funding. Because I do think the way it's set up now is not necessarily fair for the taxpayers if you put money into it from the taxpayers. So,
But I think now is the time to answer your questions. If this is approved, then it's out of our hands to ask any questions.
well, I would think it would have to come up to fund it. FinCom, the next FinCom group would be addressing how to fund it.
Well,
And I would hope it would come up.
the next vote would be just simply to fund it.
Yeah.
If this approves it, then it's, the mechanism's in place, and the only issue is to fund it. There'd be no other questions about how to disperse it or anything else.
Then I wouldn't fund it.
Yeah, I mean, we just sort of lived through the cycle on the historic commission motion as well, where we didn't like all the elements of it last year, we thought about it, debated it, pushed back on it, they came back and improved it. So one of the options today is to say we're not ready to accept this because they haven't addressed, maybe it's our fault for not bringing it up earlier or strongly enough, but we haven't addressed recruitment. We haven't addressed disbursement criteria. We don't even know if this is constitutional, right? I think we heard some of that, it's not clear that taking from one taxpayer and giving it to other taxpayers is even gonna be approved by. So I really wanna, as a person, I'd like to vote. I think many of us want to vote with our heart and say, let's do this, but one of the options is to vote indefinite postponement and say, these are 3 things we'd like to address over the next year, and put forward a more fulsome or more detailed warrant article in the spring town meeting, fall town meeting. That's an option here.
I'm strongly in favor of this. I honestly think that you can put the controls you put in place when it comes to allocating the money. That can be even written, whoever does the write-up can state that what we would like to see, if indeed this passes home rule petition. At the end of the day, I don't think we're talking about a whole bunch of money here. And this is not, I mean, I think, so if it's a couple $100,000 and there are controls in place, all it does is give the town another way of addressing some tax relief. And it could be subject to an annual appropriation. I guess we could say we want the money appropriated each way, but this is, once again, all I think this is doing is giving the town a fairly creative way. And as I recall, there are other towns trying to get this done, and this home rule petition is maybe a bit on the forefront. And I think it's going to take a couple of years. Home rule petition is not an easy thing to get done. But at the end of the day, my argument is it gives the selectmen another vehicle. We have controls over the amount of money that goes into it. We can, in our write-up, suggest that, as Mike said, maybe there are other criteria that got to be included, but it does give, the selectmen another. And I think indefinite postponement is a little bit harsh on this one. If some of us are not in favor of it, and some are, that can be expressed in the write-up, and maybe there'll be a very healthy discussion on town floor.
It's not really the selectmen, there are trustees of the fund.
Whatever, okay.
So, really what we're doing is creating a more steady flow, and as Jim said, kind of using taxpayers' money, because it already does get funded by donations. And I'm sure that they hope those donations don't go away when the town starts funding it, but that's another issue. I mean, what impact the town funding it would have on future donations.
To respond to George, from my opinion, the amount of money is the lesser of the issues. And as we've all said, there's no dollar amount here. So we could all be thinking it's $100,000 and the vote would come up to $1 million. And then that's a whole different can of worms. It's just more the principle, except we want to do tax relief for everyone as a whole as opposed to specific.
Any further discussion? I know it's getting late and we're doing well here, we're getting a lot done. I think this is a great discussion, and thank you everyone for contributing to this. Any further discussion before we vote? People comfortable voting? Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded to approve. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye.
Raise your good time. 8 approve.
Wow. I think that's the biggest split we've ever had.
So you get a I guess it's
We had more dialogue over that than we did the school budget.
Who's writing that?
Is everyone?
I'm supposed to
What about
think
it?
everyone needs some
We're
house.
gonna go non-favorite.
Oh, sorry, opposed.
Yeah.
Opposed.
Sorry.
Raise your hands high, opposed.
Sorry. I'm slipping.
6, 7, good. No
Just
abstentions.
wrote 8 and 7 on my page.
Right.
Any abstentions? That's who's writing that one?
I think Emily,
Are you?
so maybe some folks can bring it.
Yeah. Maybe you could talk with Jim.
Yeah.
Because Jim is, and Marjorie also, or Craig.
But
Oh.
actually it's separate by hour,
Is separate?
at 8 to 7.
I think they
Yeah,
have that
that's
separate. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I just aspire to.
No, would you mind maybe working with Craig on the minority opinion?
Sure.
Is it Julie?
Just about how against it or for it, just
What's
for
that?
it.
How far back?
Just to explain what the minority opinion is,
Yeah,
why.
we can try to sum it up in
Maybe-
600 words.
Yeah, like, how did you vote? You voted
I voted against it.
against it? Oh, okay. Sorry.
I guess I'm not.
Maybe the, three of you,
Sure.
can circulate and that's perfectly appropriate.
It's too late.
You want me to do the
You're doing
the majority, the favorite, okay.
Yeah. Is that how you voted?
Yeah.
Favorite, yeah.
I was assigned the article, so it's just, does anyone, George, do you want to weigh in on the
I will
majority?
help you if you want me to,
Okay.
but I voted in favor. Anything you want me to do, Julie?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll finish
That was-
these.
that was a
Well,
very
I
good
got a lot of
discussion,
notes, but I'll go back.
We didn't have to leave it.
Okay, we just got a little more work to do, folks. Next one is complete streets, sidewalks redesign, Gay Street, Route 109. Is there a motion?
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Cindy, you're second too.
It's the Sydney.
Everything's
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, sounds like a unanimous vote in favor. And the collection bin bylaw. Is there a motion?
Motion approved. Second.
And it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Next, page 14, home rule petition, sale of wine for off-premise consumption at farmers markets. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is that to approve?
Yeah, to approve.
Is there, has been seconded, any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Did people vote on that one? Okay, let's redo that one, folks. This is the home rule petition, sale of wine for off-premise consumption in farmers market. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Or abstaining? That's a unanimous vote in favor. That's my bad. And lastly, but then we just have one more thing after this. Lastly, amendment of general bylaws, section 321 regarding retail stores. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous vote in favor. Thank you, everyone. Just one other piece of business, and this culminates a lot of work by a lot of people, all this training. One thing I think we do pretty badly on FinCom is that we don't do a good job of acknowledging the work of members who cycle off FinCom. Because we always get to this night, this is our last real formal meeting, even though we may have a quick meeting before town meeting, and then we have town meeting, and then we reorganize in June. And sometimes we don't know who's leaving or not until they're gone. And we don't have an opportunity to thank people. So I haven't yet had an opportunity to ask folks if there's, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anyone here that knows they're not returning? I don't think you are.
I want to get on the permanent building committee, to be honest with you. I'd like to do more.
That'd be a great.
I don't have the financial background or knowledge really to be on this committee, I don't think, but,
Where do things stand with you trying to get on the PVC?
all right.
Have you talked to anyone about it, or?
Yeah, I mentioned it to Mike. Mike Gillette, but. I don't
That's a
know if
point
it's-
about the water.
No letters of recommendation from us?
Well, Pete, if you're not coming back, we want to thank you. I mean, you've really
Thank you, it's
elevated
been
the
it's
discussion.
been a pleasure learning from folks, an amazing group of people.
We've learned a lot from you. I know I have personally.
Absolutely.
So I don't see anyone who's definitely not returning, so, Pete, thank you. And if you have any, if there are any other thoughts, just make sure you let Alice Moore know, if you want to re-up or whatever your circumstance is. So I want to thank everybody. This has been a great year. It's been a lot of work. So thank you, everybody.
Right up
Thank
to
you.
tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Right, sorry, Jane. Okay, write-ups. So Jane needs your write-ups by Friday.
Yes.
April 1st.
It would be really helpful if you copied both Marion and I by Friday for the write-ups. Everybody hear that? It's a hard deadline, write-ups are due by Friday, copy both Marion and I on the, in the business on Friday, by 5 o'clock.
Nora, did you want to say anything?
I don't know.
Did everybody hear that? And did you
Thank you for all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion made,
All in favor?